and then I can keep an eye on the comments too to see who is going on. All right, I think we're up. What's going on, MEC? How's everybody doing? Go ahead and let me know if you guys are seeing this, if we are live or not. Sometimes Zoom's a little funny, but okay, I think I hear something. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Super excited for this this training. I know this is something that a lot of people are curious about, but they're not even sure how to dip their toes into. So thank you so much for swinging by. And I know I'm excited for this one. So tell me a little bit more for those people out there that don't know your background. I know all the awesome stuff you've been doing. Why don't you fill these guys in a little bit?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me here, man. This is freaking awesome because I followed your group for a long time. So I appreciate you sharing some airtime with me. I've had a podcast now for almost 3 years called Create Your Own Life. We're closing in very quickly on 400 episodes where we've featured people like yourself on the show. And we're closing in 1 million downloads as well. So a lot of stuff have been rocking and rolling here. And it's cool too because I've got go for it, man.
Pause button. You closing in on 1 million downloads. That's freaking awesome.
Yeah, man. I
got a typo in my title, man. I said 100,000. We need another comment.
No. We're it's interesting because I feel like the last year we've kind of seen this like momentum like really growing. So we hit 100,000, 300,000, and we're just over 5. And with the way it's picking up, we should hit 1 million before the end of the year.
That is just like, what does that feel like knowing that your work has been received by, coming up on 1 million people?
It's interesting, man, because I don't know if you feel like this, but I struggle a lot with imposter syndrome. So I'm kind of like, this guy. But also at the same time, it's cool because I'm actually being able to create like my show, Create Your Own Life. I've been able to create the life I want to create, which is cool at the same time, and helping people, which that's all fun, man.
Yeah. And I feel like that's such a cool journey about podcasting, and not only for you and getting to build your online presence and making an impact and get all those crazy download numbers.
Yeah, dude.
But like help shine the light on all your guests. And so that's what we're going to be covering a little bit today. How to get on that other side of it, how to show up and land some of these top interviews. I know for me, I got a little lucky with some podcast stuff because I had a podcast at one point. So I immediately
which is still featured in iTunes, I may say, by the way, dude. If you want to like decide, it's still new and noteworthy. Like, just start doing episodes again.
That's like almost 2 years ago. I don't know.
Go into business, marketing, and management in iTunes. You're still right on the freaking front page.
Wow. Okay. I need to like do one more episode and be like, hey guys, come to my Facebook group.
You're still featured on the top, man. I'd love to see what those numbers look like because you're just getting free advertising all the time.
Right. I haven't even looked at that for months. So that's funny. I didn't know. But yeah, I'll check that out. But yeah, guys, I had a ton of fun with my podcast. It wasn't in the cards to go as full speed as you are, and you're just crushing it. So congratulations, man. That's awesome. You deserve every bit of that success.
Thanks,
and it's super cool to see exactly, what you've done with it, and also how you've been able to like skyrocket your influence and your business, showing up on other people's podcasts too.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the main things that we're going to cover today and train people on?
Well, we're going to cover what you should look like, what kind of materials you should have, what you're going to talk about on those episodes, how you're going to reach out to them. And also the important part is like, what are you going to do with it? Because just appearing on a podcast is one thing, but then you should always be thinking of how can I use this content?
Y'all gotta excuse me on the MEC. I'm trying to mute myself between responses. I'm out in this busy cafe right now. So thanks for your patience. Of course, you got the good setup going on. But yeah, I know this is gonna be like very, very easy for people to go and take some of this and get some results. So guys, listen up and let's get into it. So how do people get started if they want to start landing some podcast features?
Well, the first thing, man, is like having your website looking right. And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize. Every website, if they want to check out my site, jeremyryanslate.com/media, they'll get an idea what I'm going to talk about here is you actually have a media page. And that's going to have logos and links to all of the major publications I've been in. Well, actually, every publication I've been in. And that's something you should really be thinking about is having a page where if somebody's press or a podcast host or whatever can go to your website and see. And if you're concerned about, hey, I don't have any press, For me, man, when I had a podcast, when I just got started out and people didn't know who I was, when I got 50,000 downloads, I sent it to the local newspaper. And guess what? They ran it in print and on their online edition. So I got my first link. So there's always an easy way to get it. And I like to tell people, figure out what your small pond is, figure out what the group is that's going to care about what you're talking about, and they'll run it. So that's kind of the first thing. The second thing is having a speaker kit. A lot of people call it a one pager or a one sheet or something like that. And that's a sheet that has your bio, a photo of you, your talking points, some of the places you've been featured. And it depends on who it is. Sometimes people like to have quotes from other people talking about them, or they just like to have their social links or something like that. But it's basically anything that somebody in the media can look at in one page, know who you are, know why you're important. It's pretty standard in the PR community, but it also is great for reaching out to podcasts as well. So that's kind of the first thing, is having everything in place, having a great media page and having a great speaker kit, because you're going to look way more professional than anybody else out there that's just, sending out an email. Hey, I'm a judo Facebook ninja superstar. Have me on your podcast so people buy my stuff. Like you're first of all going to look way more professional than anybody else out there. And that's kind of like the first thing that people should be considering.
Yeah, no doubt. And I remember kind of getting an insider look at that, being a podcaster who was also showing up on a lot of podcasts, was I would kind of reverse engineer what I looked for in guests and how I screen people. And one of the most important factors for me when I was looking at them was their ability to tell stories and like what was actually on their website. So like, what do you look for specifically on people's website when you're screening them as a guest?
I look for awesome stories. And I will say I'm a little bit different than other people because there's a little bit of me that likes celebrities at the same time. So I look for, and it's funny because I went to a conference called New Media Summit. So everybody there knew I like celebrities. So they tried to, in their pitch, involve some way that they've worked with a celebrity because they know they'll grab my attention. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. You worked with Arnold Schwarzenegger? Or you worked with Arne Giske. So that's something for me that's important. And every host is going to be a little bit different, but having a great story is so important because stories are old as time, man. Like they have this like primal power to grab people. And that's what you have to really think about, because stories are where transformation starts. And that's usually what a lot of shows are going to start with, is a story. And that's where you're going to grab people's attention. If you're just getting on there talking facts and figures and just, a lot of stuff like that, people are done, man. And this as much as I do. Like there's certain things that are fun for us as an interviewer. And if it's not fun for me as an interviewer, not interesting to my audience, I don't want to do it, man. So story is so important for me. And also like what you're going to teach my audience is super important as well, because I want my audience to walk away with something like they can actually do. And that's a little bit different than some other shows, but for me, that's the most important thing.
No doubt. And like, that's one thing I remember so much during interviewing, even with these Facebook Lives, is like when it's a guest that I can vibe with, when I'm seriously interested in them and their story and really trying to pull out the best bits, that makes the show that much better for the whole audience too. But if it's like super dry, or if the guest is like, just talking about their book launch or whatever else is going on.
I hate that.
Yeah, it's like, it becomes less fun and it brings the whole tonality down of it. So I'm sure you're going to be teaching a lot about interview delivery and everything in your course. But what are some of the tips you would have for people so that they can, after they get booked, that they can show up and actually be entertaining and be engaging with the listeners?
Well, here's there's three main components to every great interview. There's a story, that personal story we talked about, a message, what you're going to teach, and then a call to action. And all three of these things need to be in alignment. That message, concentrate on one thing that you want people to walk away with, whether they buy something from you or not. And when you have that mindset, you're going to be just out there to offer value, and you're actually going to change the way you show up on a podcast. Now, the call to action as well should be something set up so that you can build a relationship with the people listening to you. Like, you don't just want to think, okay, I'm here just to get leads, because guess what? You won't get any. It's about figuring out how you can build a relationship. So for us, that's a funnel that offers some sort of value every day once somebody opts in for whatever freebie it is I'm giving out. For me, it's usually a checklist on how to be a great podcast guest, because it aligns with what I'm teaching, which is how to be a great podcast guest. So I'm going to help them actually implement what I talked about, because then they're going to want to go get it. And then what happens is every day I offer them a short video. Me, it's usually 5 days, and an opportunity to buy. In my emails, they get an opportunity to book a call with me. And that's what you have to be considering, is you always have to be balancing that. You don't want to be just giving, because value is so important, but you don't want to give just straight value, because if you don't give them any place to take action, then you're also doing yourself a disservice. We don't want to be unpaid consultants either. So you need to have a story, something powerful and personal, message, something they can teach, something they can do, and a call to action, which is something that's going to help them implement what you just taught them, and is also going to help you build a relationship with them so they could either A, work with you, or B, become part of your audience, because audience members are just as valuable as people that work with you, because they can promote you to people that don't know about you.
Love it. And I think one of the biggest things that actually got me into podcasting to start was the power of audio, of storytelling, of feeling that over just written text. People say, oh, well, how come you don't start a blog? You're a good writer. And I was saying, it's so much more fun to have these real conversations, authentic, unedited, and you hear the tonality. And I'm just curious, how, what do you say about why people should show up with their story like that? How does that help them, make a connection with the audience?
Because the thing is too, is you're talking to so many different people. You don't know how many people aren't in the same situation you were in, or in something similar. I had somebody on my show, Sean Douglas, who has a pretty crazy story of how he was on the floor with a gun in his mouth and ready to kill himself, and how he actually flipped his life around and he's helping other people. I'm sure there's somebody else that maybe hasn't done that, but has had thoughts like that Sean is totally going to reach. And I think that's what you really have to be thinking about, is it just has this power to emotionally connect with somebody and maybe be just what they need to get to the next, the next place in their life where they can do something amazing. And I think that's what you really have to be thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And the power in that goes so much deeper than just written. You can tell compelling stories, you can have, visual writing, but when you can really hear the full emotion in somebody's voice, I feel like that makes such a truer connection. So it's super awesome.
And that's the thing too. Like you've probably seen as much as I do. Like somebody sends you a text message and you read something else into it that's not there, or that maybe actually is there, you aren't picking up. And that's the difference between hearing something in text, man. Like you miss these things you could pick up in audio and actually hanging out with somebody.
Yeah, no doubt. And I've noticed that too. Any kind of serious conversations that need to happen, whether it's a business partner, a girlfriend, friends, whatever. You don't want to put that in text, because people, miscommunicate stuff during doing text. So you want to have that, and you really, really be a lot more compelling. And what's your dog's name?
This is my wife's dog. This is Coco Chanel. And I had to pick her up so she would stop barking.
Well, she can hang out for the interview. Everybody loves dogs, right? Guys, drop a comment if you want the dog to join this interview.
Here we go.
They'll love it. So that's another funny thing. So you might know Jeff Hunter. He did a content experiment of a bunch of different types of stuff. And he found his posts that had his dogs or his kids in them outperformed everything else.
Jeff Hunter's just awesome anyway, though. We talked about The Office and coding in binary on my episode with him, so don't even get into that, man.
Yeah, it's all over the place. And I feel like that's another really cool thing about podcasts, is when it's the right guest and right host and everything just vibing, you get to show a lot more of your personality than just, the 30-second written bio or whatever. And that is a lot of fun to do.
It's huge, because you can actually if you want to be vulnerable, be vulnerable, and also be yourself, be your weird self and be okay with it, because there's somebody out there that's just like you. I know Amanda Petrie has a podcast called Market Like a Nerd, and she loves superheroes and being a nerd and all this kind of stuff. And it's because somebody out there is actually going to resound with that and pick up on that, because she's being who she is. And I think that's the amazing thing about the podcasting world, is you actually have this ability to be able to connect with people for who you are.
Yeah, no doubt. I definitely enjoy that too. It's such a cool community. And one of the really cool things is, I'm sure you could talk about this as well, is how kind of once you break into it and you start getting a few features, you can leverage that to get a lot more.
Yeah. Well, for me, I've leveraged it even in getting real press. I've used that for Forbes and Inc. and a lot of other stuff. And I think that's the beautiful thing. I try to explain this to people, even with just straight press, right? You can't get Forbes day one, just like you're not going to get Tim Ferriss or Art of Charm day one. You may never get those unless you're a celebrity. But here's something to think about: is there's stairs, right? You get the lower level podcast to get the medium level podcast to get to the higher level podcast. And that's what people don't get with press as well. Like start with local, get a little bit more regional, then maybe you get lucky and get Forbes now, or you have to work towards it. There's no elevator, man. There's no instantly I'm there. You have to build what we call a portfolio of podcasts or of press to be able to get more stuff. So it's continually building features and using those as social proof and leverage to create more features and more opportunities. I know people that use them to get speaking gigs. They use them to close clients, whatever it may be. There's one of our clients would actually take and send interviews to segmented portions of their email list that they knew were close enough that may buy if they heard, basically social proof that they were talking on a show where they were the expert. And it's kind of amazing when you can do that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and the coolest thing about it is you never know exactly what's going to happen after a show airs.
Right.
It could be, holy crap, we get 20,000 downloads, and now my inbox is flooded with new clients.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a speaking gig, or it could be a new opportunity. It could be a new partnership.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy what can happen. And I know a buddy of mine, Dale Hensel, he told me a while back he got on a real estate podcast. So let's talk about real estate investing. And he had people reach out to him after that, like investors, and he was able to raise multi-millions of dollars
mm-hmm.
for his projects just through a podcast.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I heard you talk about something for 30 minutes. Now I want to connect with you. Let's get it going. Like, wow. Like, you never know what can happen.
Well, in the real estate space, essentially you mentioned that is a really hot space, especially in podcasting. Because I know we had a client in the real estate space that he did 100,000 in revenue directly off podcasts. And then he did almost 4 times that with his own Facebook ad strategy after that. But here's the interesting thing, like almost 100K off of podcast guesting because he showed up as an expert and was there to help people. Real estate especially is a really hot market right now.
No doubt. So what are some of the other ways that people, because I know people, they want to get featured, they want to show up, they want to get the exposure and the credibility, but
mm-hmm.
how are people using podcasts to actually grow their business? Like, how are the smartest podcasters doing it today?
Well, here's the one thing I want to say is like, I don't think that whole idea of build a big podcast and sell ads is the way to do anything. It doesn't work like that anymore. The space is getting bigger all the time. There's over 400,000 podcasts now at this point in time, 60,000 new ones last year. But the point is, a podcast is beautiful in a couple ways. One way of positioning, being seen with celebrities or opinion leaders or whoever, where you borrow some of their credibility. Number 2 is it's going to promote your business or your back-end product or whatever it may be. Don't just say, all right, I'm going to build a podcast and turn on the ad money, because it's not going to happen. There's very few people that will, do what John Lee Dumas has done. It's very impressive what he's done, but that's just not a viable option, at this point in time. But build out a great content piece that's going to build your celebrity, that's going to build your credibility, and that's actually going to generate more business for you. I wouldn't have a business if it wasn't for podcasting. Podcasting helped me to build that, but you just have to find out where the opportunity is in your current business or where it may go based on the credibility you build off of a podcast. So that's something to really think about. It's not this idea of making money directly off of the podcast. You may get leads, you may get all these other sort of things, but the podcast isn't this thing, build it big and then sell ads. It's not going to work like that. It's just, you have to think of it as something valuable to help people that promotes you, promotes what you do, and can sell your back end business.
Absolutely. Love it. Much like a Facebook group in that sense, where it's not just there to market and sell, and definitely not selling just ad space. It's about building the brand. It's about building that audience and really being able to take them and figure out what to do with it next.
Could you imagine how some people would crush Facebook groups if they could run ads in their own group? Oh, it's so bad. Anyway.
I'm sure that'll happen soon enough.
Anyway.
Yeah. All right. So I'm seeing a couple of questions coming in. Let's see. Okay, awesome. Somebody asked, what's the best way to pitch a podcaster?
Cool. So
Okay. So what's the best way to pitch a podcaster, and would a short text pitch plus video with a story be okay?
So here's the thing is, as podcasters, a lot of times we're lazy, so we may not watch your video. So you can do that. You can try something like BombBomb or something if you want. But if you remember, we talked about story, messaging, call to action. Myself, I want something I can read in 30 seconds. You have a call to action. Everybody knows it. Drop it. Don't bother it in the email. Worry about story and message. Worry about, your personal credibility of why you're there, but don't talk about it from the standpoint of I'm awesome and I'm a legend and I'm this. You want to talk about, something emotional that has to do with what you're talking about. And then also you want to look at what you can teach that audience. That's super important, because as a podcaster, that's what I care about. And you don't want to be coming at it from a point of view of the worst pitch email I ever got, Arne, you've probably gotten something like this before, was, so I would love your audience to buy my book and I would love to delete your email. So that's really what you don't want to come at it from. We know you have a call to action, or there's no reason for you to be doing this. So don't worry about it in your pitch. Unless, of course, you have an affiliate offer. Leave it at the end and tell the podcaster about it, or wait till email number 2 when they say yes. I wouldn't really have that up front. Worry about what you can offer the audience.
Yeah, no doubt. I remember that too, where I would look, get all these crazy pitches, and I pretty much figured out like, okay, what I would respond best to and what I would pitch myself as if I did pitch. And it would always follow like, what are you gonna do for the audience? What are you gonna do for me and my show?
Mm-hmm.
And what's that have to do with you? And it's like, okay, because the show's only there because of the audience, and the show's only there because I'm a host, and then the show's there because we need some guests too. So that's like the whole hierarchy of it,
and uniqueness of that too, because I can't tell you the number of like, I'm a Facebook ads expert emails that I get, because I'm like, yeah, you and 100 million other people. So it's like, you need to look at what is unique about what you're doing, because I'm sure there's something really cool and unique about what you're doing. You just need to find it.
Yeah, no doubt. And how that story ties into it. Because even if there are a bajillion Facebook ad experts out there, if you have some crazy story about, how you might have, quit your job, or, some crazy thing you went through.
Yeah.
And then you started, figuring out how to build your Facebook ads business. And then you figured out how to get a, $1 million ad spend or whatever. There's always an angle if you dive deep enough.
Well, and here's the thing, like Nicholas Kuzmich, for example, the guy is the best at Facebook ads, but he doesn't need to talk about that because his personal story, I don't know if you've ever heard it, is incredible. And if he just led with that story, aside from being a Facebook ad expert, he can be on anything he wants. And I think that's what you really have to look at, is we all have our personal experiences in our story. And that's what people connect with, because it makes them feel like they're just like you. And the information you have to give them can actually help them.
Yeah, I think so. What do you think would be a tip you would have for people so that they can communicate more of that personal story in their pitch, or even in their website and their messaging? Because one thing I found is majority, I want to say 90% plus of my media appearances were people reaching out to me, and that's because I'm always communicating my story.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, oh wow, that's cool, you should come talk about that here. Okay. So what do you think people's messaging has to do with getting them on podcasts and media, even if it's not a direct pitch?
Worry about emotion and narratives rather than, exact, like these exact steps that happen in my life. Because for me, like personally, like the story that always grabs people is when I got last rites at 19. They're like, whoa, okay, I got their attention now. And that's really what you want to think about, because somebody says, wow, you did that and you came back to this point. You really want to look at how that has, and it's interesting because in my own story, when I talk about that, I'm like, and here's the funny thing is that didn't change my life. It wasn't this like come to Jesus moment where my life was going to instantly change. And it wasn't until I almost lost a parent that my life changed. And that's where I made the decision, hey, I want to create my own life. Mm-hmm. And that's what you really want to look at. How can those things tie together? Because if those things tie together, because now you instantly have people's attention, so they're going to keep listening to the podcast, but then also you have their attention in the way that they feel like what you're telling them they can do. They don't seem like it's impossible to them because like, I've had those thoughts or I've had that experience. So you always want to lead with emotion and narratives, because telling stories, if Russell Brunson, right? If you listen and read anything Russell does, it's always around a bunch of short stories. And those are what the best teachers and the best people that tell personal stories do, is everything's built around stories. I don't know how many times I've heard his potato gun story, but you know what? It has taught me so much about how you put together a course. So there you go.
Yeah, no doubt. And like, I think the coolest thing, and it's so underrated, is those little short stories. Is when you're strategic enough with that, and when you are compelling enough and you practice that enough, you could convince anyone to do anything. If you have a good enough story that, like, the moral of the story is you should listen to me and buy my stuff. It's like, it worked. Wow.
Right.
Like,
right.
It's just so cool. I see that time and time again. Like, the art of that is just amazing, and the ability to come on a podcast and do that, and have that rehearsed story, and then be able to put your personality into it and kind of flex with the show and show that off and be like, okay, more of the stories, you should probably work with me. Then you get a bunch of leads, and it's just awesome. So Guys,
can I add one thing to that real quick too? Before
of
you said
course.
rehearse story, make sure it's not too rehearsed.
Yeah,
Because it can feel. I interviewed a guy recently actually that felt like he was reading off a piece of paper to me. I'll leave his name out of this, and that's kind of weird. So you want to figure out how you can tell that interview through different lenses, because different people need to receive it in different ways and different shows need to receive it in different ways. Anyway, I'll let you.
No doubt. No, yeah, that's a really good point, because like I've had that too, where I could very obviously tell I was one stop on somebody's media tour, and it was like
not fun.
It's like they have the same whole thing every single time, barely differs. And I feel like the funnest shows I've been on as a guest, it's like they're throwing all these curveball questions and like pulling all these weird answers out of me, and they're just so much more fun and memorable. So
it's spontaneous.
Yeah. So that's actually another good question. How do you find good shows? Not only top rated and popular, but people you think would be a really good fit for you and what your message is.
Well, here's the one thing is, first of all, know what your message is. And that's not to be rude or anything like that, but I feel like some people don't have that really tied down. So know your messaging first, and then look for those keywords in iTunes, look for the top categories there. And when you look at different shows, you can actually look at related shows. Look at shows that listeners also subscribe to. Something else to consider is look at shows that aren't big, because you need to start somewhere. People need to hear that you've been on a podcast. Look for shows that have less than 100 episodes, less than 20 reviews, because they're going to be a lot easier to talk to. So look at things like that. You can also Google top podcast lists and just look for shows that are similar to those. I wouldn't target a lot of those bigger shows first, because you need to build some credibility. But this is kind of like, once you're rocking and rolling, you can say, I've been a guest on this show, and consider getting testimonials from those hosts. Because I know Brian K. Wright from Success Profiles Radio has been really good with that. He has a whole page of testimonials from people that have interviewed him. And you can use that, because I had a guest close me on that, where I said no to her, and she sent me back, well, look at this testimonial I got from Jordan Harbinger. I'm like, all right, I'm in. And that's something to really think about, because for me, that backed me up, and it turned me around to what I was doing. So you want to be thinking about that as well, is always thinking about how you can talk to the decision maker. Like, I don't want to talk to the podcast host secretary or producer or definitely not their contact form on their website. So I want to figure out how I can talk to that person. That's the actual person doing the interview.
All right. That's a nugget right there. The contact form, pit of doom. So I remember that as well. The worst inquiries came through the contact form, the worst pitches, because that's people who don't have an in, there's no relationship. So
well, here's a funny thing to that too, man, is like, I use my middle name in branding just because there's somebody that has the same name as me. But I know when people really don't know me, when they write the email, "Hey Ryan," I'm like, who's that guy?
Yeah. So there's another good tip you should go into: researching the show and the host.
Yeah. Know who you're talking to, man. You really have to.
So how can they make sure they do their research right? Because like I've seen that too, like terrible pitches, off brand, spell my name wrong, all that kind of stuff.
I'd love to see some of the name spellings you get, by the way, because you have a different and interesting name.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too, is like, as I mentioned before, telling a story that can impact, like, you want to make sure what you're doing is actually going to be right for that audience, because you may be pitching the totally wrong audience. And that's something to think about too, is if you're going to pitch the right person. Like, for example, here's a great example of that, is when I started my podcast, I took 8 hours pitching the guests I wanted. I wrote individual emails to 100 people that I most wanted to interview. And I had like a 60% response rate. And it wasn't because they all said yes. Seth Godin said no, but I wish you a great day. And that's something to think about. Like, if you tailor it to that person, it's going to take you more time, but you're going to get a better effort in the end. And that's what you really want to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, that's extremely powerful on both sides of, whether your podcast or pitching high profile guests, or somebody who's trying to get on high profile podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think people should like kind of tailor their pitches and their messages?
You want to make sure that like what the purpose of the show is, who they're talking to, like who their audience is, what their audience cares about. And I think that's the biggest thing, is like, as an interviewer, I'm always trying to ask questions from the viewpoint my audience is going to have. So you really want to think about that, because when I'm reading that and glancing through it quickly, that's another thing, is making sure this stuff is quick and concise, because I'm probably going to give you about 30 seconds looking at that email if I give you that. And that's not to be rude. That's just my attention span. So you really want to think about that, because a lot of people have short attention spans, man. Say it quickly, say it concisely, but say it in a way that's going to matter to my audience.
No doubt. Yeah, definitely get that attention quick. And what do you think is the craziest pitch you've ever got?
Craziest pitch I ever got.
Or like top five. So like some of the most outlandish things people have sent you.
Here it is, and it got her on my show. I interviewed this woman, Rosie Aiello, and she says, how the hell did she put this? She goes, so I married a man internationally, and had to run away from him to America to actually create the life I wanted to create. I'm like, okay, let's talk about that. What happened, Rosie?
Yeah.
She was in this, bad marriage, and because like of this cultural thing, she couldn't leave the country. It was a Middle Eastern country. She had to come to America and had to wait till her daughter was over 21 because otherwise her daughter would be stuck there. And it was like the craziest story I've ever had. I'm like, yeah, I got to talk about this.
Yeah, that's intense. So I call that the pattern interrupt. Just totally threw you off. You're like,
I'm just like, whoa, okay, let's do it.
I got to talk to you. And like, so that's another funny thing I've noticed too. Like when I'm personally extra interested in somebody's story, I'm a lot more inclined to do it. So like if you can figure out, what the podcast hosts are into, not just their show, but like what's going on in their business, what's going on in their life, I'm sure you can tailor it a little bit more towards their interest, right?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, because like if people know me, like I love that kind of stuff. Like I'm a sucker for a good story, but don't try the story with Nathan Latka because he has no time for it. He just wants to see how you built your business and the exactness of the way you did it and how you can tell that in 15 minutes. So that's why you really need to know what that person cares about. So do a little research on the host. Me, I love stories and celebrities. Nathan Latka loves numbers. So you need to really think about that.
Yeah, no doubt. And like actually listening to an episode or two.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's a really great idea.
even like 15 minutes of an episode, like.
Yeah, because that's an interesting thing too, because you can actually communicate in the way the show needs to receive it. Even if that's, downloading the Overcast player and listening to it at 2x speed just so you can get through it. Whatever you got to do to make it work, but don't go onto that show cold. Never. Yeah,
no doubt. So awesome, man. This is super cool. And for anybody out there, make sure you guys drop some more questions if you have any. Don't want to leave you guys with unanswered questions. We went through a bunch: how to pitch, how to make yourself look better online, how to show up and actually be compelling as a guest, whole bunch of stuff. So make sure you guys drop some questions. I'm going to go ahead and check that out and see if we have any more comments. But what do you think are some of the things that are the biggest misconceptions about getting on podcasts and leveraging that for your business that people have?
I think the biggest misconception I see that just getting on the podcast is kind of like the end game. And that's the biggest thing is like, what are you going to do to leverage that? Are you going to repurpose content? Are you going to use it to create some sort of a content engine? Are you going to use that to get other press? Like, as I said, I've gotten a lot of press features. So that's what I want people to understand is getting on the show is important and you'll see attention, but it's not the be all end all. It's like, what's part two is then what are you going to do with it? Cause like, I know I have a friend that using his EO Fire podcast closed a $10,000 sale without any sales cycle whatsoever. And that's what you really want to think about is how you can leverage those can help you grow your business, help you grow your credibility, and create opportunities for yourself that you didn't think existed. Can't hear you.
No, I'm still muted. So yeah, it's those opportunities that you never know would be out there if you don't figure out how to go out and get them.
Totally.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff we covered today. Whole bunch of stuff we did not cover, and I know you are super excited about your recent training that's coming out. So fill me in a little bit on that. I know you go a lot more deeper into every bit of this and how people can get top-rated podcasts, leverage to grow your business. So what's going on with that?
Yeah, so it's interesting because like in my company, which is Command Your Brand Media, we actually help people get booked on top-rated podcasts, and we're high ticket for what we do. I realized there's a whole other group of people that wanted my help, but just, couldn't afford to work with us one-on-one. So I wanted to give an opportunity to do that. So I created something called the Ultimate Guide to Getting Interviewed on Top-Rated Podcasts, which is literally like everything I have in my brain dumped out into 3 hours of a course that teaches them how to do from step one of how to prep yourself, your story, everything, through reaching out, through the format for reaching out, through different ways that I use to get to the decision maker, and through even like what you should be doing to promote that. And I share a lot of cool stuff with them. Like I give them my funnel template that they can use for their interviews. I give them my speaker one sheet template, my media page template. So I really help people that if they're willing to do it themselves, give them everything they need to do to rock and roll and make it happen if they're not able to work with me one-on-one. And the beautiful thing about this is we actually have a private Facebook accountability group that we put with this, so people can get questions answered, can get their pitches looked at, all this different things. So you're not on your own. You're going to have a ton of help to make this rock and roll.
Love it, man. That's awesome. That's what people need. And yeah, so I just dropped a link in the comments for you guys down there. And disclaimer, I am an affiliate. Proud to promote and shout you out, man. Really appreciate the time here. And just in case anybody looks into this program and goes through it, I want to give you guys another bonus here. So I actually did a training a while back called Media Magnetism. So you're very focused on the pitching and the story and all these different things. And I figured out some really cool ways to get people to come and approach you. And it's this very like underutilized tricks that are so simple. It could take you just a couple hours to do, and it will set your online presence up to attract high profile media opportunities for a while.
I need to get me that, man. I love attention.
Yeah. I'll hook you up on that one. I think you'd like it too. But it's basically a strategic way to design your online presence to plant a whole bunch of seeds without a whole lot of extra work. So that's how I figured out how to get so many media appearances without pitching, attract a lot of really great opportunities and everything from speaking gigs and different things like that. I got my first paid speaking gig through the same exact method. So if anybody wants to hop in this program, recommend it. You know your stuff. You are the podcast master, PR master. And I just want to throw that little cherry on top in case anybody goes through that. I'll make sure to hook you guys up with that. So you guys have any other questions about podcasting, getting on podcasts, pitching yourself, PR, any of that stuff? The program, now's the time. Let us know. Would love to help you guys out and get some results with this, because I can't tell you how much PR has done for my business, especially in the first year of starting out. I was an absolute nobody, and I really wanted to figure out how I could kind of step up on the scene, get connected, build an audience, and then figure out how to later turn that into money and business growth. And PR was the vehicle to do that. Podcasting was the vehicle to do that, not only my own show, but going on other shows. So that's what I want for you guys out there in the MEC. If you guys are ready to step up, if you guys want to put in the work and figure out some very smart strategies to save you a lot of time and get you there faster, Jeremy's the guy to help. And I got a cool little bonus training on top of that for you guys. So what can people expect like at the end result? So they'll join your training, they'll go through it, and what are they going to go through, and what's their life going to be like after?
Well, here's the thing, man. Like, I'm going to give them the exact steps they need to do to get booked. You know, like I got booked by myself and my team on over 100 shows myself last year, and we booked clients in almost 500. So if you work with me individually, you're limited on what you can do. If you get through this program, man, you can book yourself in 10, 20, 30 podcasts and really rock and roll and make it happen. And think about what that could do for you. You could get publications, you could get more business. If you're not closing the amount of business that you want to close, it's probably because you don't have the press and the PR. You may be the best at what you do, but if you don't have that press and PR, I'm now the host. We lost Arne, everybody. If you don't have that press and PR, you're not going to have the credibility to close like you should be closing. And that's the difference between the people that are closing as influencers and the people that aren't. It looks like we lost Arne, everybody. Awesome, guys. So if you're looking to close more business in 2018, the way is getting on podcasts and building credibility and doing a lot of different stuff. And I totally want to help you guys with doing that. And like Arne said, we're going to be dropping the link below this video. I appreciate the ability to offer you guys some amazing advice today. I hope you guys put this into action. It looks like we lost Arne, but we will be rocking and rolling and making this happen. Looks like Arne says he's coming back ASAP. His laptop crashed, so I'll be hanging out with you here for a couple more seconds, and we'll be getting Arne back in just a second. But I just think it's really interesting, guys, like the opportunities that podcasting has created for me. I've used it to get television features. I've used it to get newspaper. I've used it to get different, business opportunities. And like I said, I built my entire business off of podcasting. So just, you want to imagine what that can do for you And I really want to see you rock and roll in terms of getting a podcast as a guest and really making it happen. It looks like Arnie's back. Woo! We got Arnie back.
Hey.
That was awesome. I'm just
I
like,
made it. Going solo?
Yeah, going solo, man, making it happen.
Good. You are an entertainer, so I'm sure it wasn't a problem, right?
Yeah, brother, we got it, man.
All right, always got it. Cool. So, what did I miss while you were out? Just telling the whole what people can expect.
Well, I was just telling them, the opportunities that podcasting can create for them, like the press opportunities it can create. And I feel like the biggest difference between, somebody that is the best at what they do and somebody that's not, that makes more money than them, is the amount of press, PR, and credibility they've created, because you can charge a lot more for your products and services if you have the credibility.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point too. I don't think we really covered that. It's like how that credibility actually reflects on how much you can charge.
Right.
And when people see you as the authority, they won't question your prices. Authorities
can charge more, man, because here we go. Here's the social proof.
No doubt. And yeah, that couldn't be truer. I recently got a 10K client who spoke to me right after my speaking gig at AdCon. Like, they saw me on stage, came with me the same day. They're like, I want to work with you. I was like, cool, let's figure something out.
Did they give you one of those Dan Henry hats with the bunny ears on it, or no?
No bunny ears hats. I guess that one's just for Dan. But yeah, like it couldn't be truer than that. And it was still kind of unreal. And then people said, well, like, yeah, like you're the guy, you just did the speaking gig, of course. So I want you guys to have those same results. I want you guys to know how seriously impactful that can be, and even just get a taste of it. Like, even if they get a couple of shows over the next couple months, like, that can be seriously impactful. That can bring you some big clients. Like, what's one client worth to you?
Yeah.
I would do like 5 of those over the next couple of months from a podcast. So yeah.
And that's the same thing as having like long-term vision, man. Thinking it's, bigger than just this one appearance. It's everything I can use this appearance to create over the next 6 months, 12 months, a year, 2 years.
Yeah, no doubt. Because like any training, like any serious program that's going to be transformative, it's not going to be a small investment. So when you guys like invest in this and you give yourself the set of skills, you will never be able to forget them. You will never be able to stop feeling this impact if you actually take it and put in the work. And that influence is a ripple effect. You guys can have this over and over and over again, and just reap tons of benefits. So highly suggest it, guys, and hope to see you guys in there. I'll be in there learning your extra tricks and hacks and everything too. So yeah, excited for that. I know I'm gonna go get some more top-rated podcasts. How about you guys? So we want to say thank you so much for the training and your upcoming new training as well. What I want to ask is, what is coming up next for you? Like, what's the most crazy exciting thing that's going on in 2018 for you?
I'm trying to get more speaking gigs this year, man. Like that's really what it's all about, because I really want to impact a lot of people. So I'm on 3 to 5 podcasts every week. But it's also, I want to get some real stages, because I'm going to, we're making even more impact here. So that's really what it's about this year, is building systems in the business, scaling up, and getting more speaking gigs.
Like, yeah, let's do it. And so I know you've been the MEC for a while now. You've seen it go all over the place. You've seen the types of people.
Dude, I survived the purge. I don't know how many people out there remember that. I need to.
Yeah, no doubt. I got to get those. But you know the type of people in here. They're all focused on creating their own life too. So like, what do you think would be like your number one piece of advice for people who want to go out there and seriously make an impact and create their own life?
2 books. One is So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. I think that's the right title too. But anyway, it's that concept. And it's basically like not following your passion, finding something you're so good at and getting even better at it, so you actually become passionate, because following your passion doesn't always pay. The other thing is the 10X rule, because you need to understand, by Grant Cardone, because you need to understand how big your action has to be to get the result you want to get. 2 books that absolutely change your life.
No doubt. How about any favorite quotes or sayings you live by?
It's just the idea of I'm always trying to take more action, man. Like that is the biggest thing I've taken to heart in every single thing I've done, is I take more action. And I think that's really the thing I would have to tell people. It's not really a quote. It's more of a concept, but it's what I've always done in my life.
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah, man.
No doubt. Awesome, man. Well, good stuff. Thank you so much for swinging by. And if you guys are curious about learning more, make sure to drop some questions. Check out the program, and I hope you guys have a good one. Thanks again, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me, man. While you're at that Greek restaurant, save me some falafel, man.
All right, I got you. All right, later, man. See ya.